Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, January 24th, 2018 to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Gamble.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mrs. Larson.
Here.
I am here, and Mr. Lewis is excused.
Thank you. And the meeting has been properly posted. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I am looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is community comment. Are there any citizens who would like to make any comment tonight? If there is, please step up to the microphone. Any comment? Hearing none, then we'll move on to item 5, consent agenda. Would any board member like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 is school board announcements. Are there any announcements? I'd just like to say I attended the spelling bee last week at the Sabre Center, and Mr. Cohn did the pronouncing. Yeah, I can't pronounce that, but you did it, and you did it very well, and it was organized by Mr. Reuter, and it was a very good competition. I enjoyed watching it. Some very good spellers.
Publicly congratulate Isabel Learman, a 7th grade at
Yeah.
Forest Park Middle School, who was our champion this year. And will represent with 7 others, the top 6, and then 2 alternates at the CISA 1 event in February. So last year, I believe, our winner advanced on to the state regional competition, but didn't make the ESPN show like we all see on TV.
Yeah.
Some tough words.
What was the last one that
The winning word.
you remember?
It was moose. The word moose.
Yeah, chocolate mousse. Yeah, not the
Yeah,
Yeah.
she did ask for definition, so she got it right, but.
And she knew she had it because as she spelled, she just was like going through the motions and then was the champion. So it was pretty exciting.
That's funny.
But there were much, more difficult words before that, so it
What was
was
the
interesting
word?
that was the last word.
Yeah.
What was the last misspelled word?
Oh, goodness. I'd have to review the footage.
A hard one.
Go back and see.
Yeah, I don't remember, because just prior to that, it was regime. I remember regime.
Actually, our final 2 were down to Mr. Feckler's daughter
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Isabel. So they were in a
Oh,
spell
wow.
off for the
Well,
final.
maybe-
a little while.
Yeah.
Maybe Mr. Feckler remembers the last misspelled word. That's right.
Feathered?
Fettered.
Feathered.
Fettered. Wow.
It was very good. Any other announcements? Thank you. School board calendar. We have a special Board of Education meeting on Wednesday, February 7th, 2018, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. A regular board meeting Wednesday, February 14th, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. And a regular board meeting Wednesday, February 28th, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. And then item 8, reports and presentations. Item 8A, the audit report, Mr. Milzer.
Yes, tonight we have the 2016-17 audit report, and we have Michelle Olszewski, our district comptroller, and Brian Mechnick of Riley, Penner, and Benton CPAs to kind of go over the highlights of the audit. So you can come up to the table here.
Thank you for having us here tonight. Brian Mechnick, I'm the partner on the audit. Just want to say that the financial statements are presented fairly. It's a unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, which is what you're looking for. We had full cooperation with staff during the audit, so thank you for that. And then the financial statements broke into two different categories, well, three. Governmental activities, this shows pretty much the fixed assets are included, your debt and your OPEB, your pension. So it kind of shows all the assets, liability, deferred inflows and outflows. And then the part of the statements that are probably the most important, the governmental funds. This shows the activity for the year, kind of how you record everything in your financial software throughout the whole year. And then also, we do a federal and state single audit, so that's included in this audit as well. So kind of just go over the highlights. Your operating results, your general fund, you had an increase in your fund balance for the year of $1,336,756 for the general fund. Fund balances for the general fund, you have $92,558, which is non-spendable, and this is the prepaid expenses that were as of June 30th. And then we have unassigned fund balance of $20,544. Then we have our general fund budgetary information. Your expenditures for the general fund, this is Fund 10 and 27 combined. Your total budget expenditures were $54,989,000. Actual expenditures were $53,491. So you spent 97% of your budget. Revenues, your budgeted revenue was $54,657,000. Your actual revenue was $54,828,000. So you received 100.31% of your budgeted revenue. So that's what accounts for the increase in the fund balance, was the higher revenue. Debt activity, this year you had proceeds on general obligation bonds of $51,380,000. Payments on general obligation bonds was $11,345,000. Your interest expense this year was $873,000. That will go up next year because of the new debt. So, then we have our other post-employment benefit, which is you have your annual OPEB stipend cost of $572,000. Contributions made were $1,313,000. Then we have the net OPEB stipend obligation. That's at $9,410,000. We have the pension obligation, which is the actual accrued liability, and the actual report on that was July 1st of 2016, and that's at $10,157,000. Then we have our supplemental pension liability. This year it's at $7,622,000, and this is based off of the actual report as of June 30th of 2016. And this is the GASB 73, so you'll see that there's a prior period adjustment related to the adoption of GASB 73. So this is taking pretty much the full actuarial liability as of June 30th, 2016, and it's showing that on the books this year, which is new. So we had a prior period adjustment of $5,724,000. So this is with the adoption of GASB 73. So this shows it's a better picture of what the actual liability is on your financial statements. Then we have GASB 68. We had deferred outflows related to the pension of $13 million. We had a net pension liability of $1,633,000. Deferred inflows related to the pension of $6,780,000. And then we have net position restricted for the WRS of $4,741,000. Or $4,741,000. So this is, we adopted that, I want to say that was 2 years ago. And Wisconsin has been really good at funding that. I've seen other states where they are way underfunded, and most districts are showing a negative fund balance because of that. So Wisconsin has done a great job with funding the retirement. So, and then we had single audit findings. The first one was eligibility. We tested the food service program as a major program. So we take a look at free and reduced lunch. We take a look at applications. There was one application that the individual was approved for free lunch. And when we went through and did the calculation, they should not have been approved for free or reduced lunch. So that was an error in that. And then there was another one that was free, and we were not able to find the application for that. So there is a finding related to that. And we did do additional testing during the audit because we did have a discrepancy. and there were no additional items, so. And then we also, the state requires that we test that certain certifications are signed and you keep a file on hand. The PI 1505, the school calendar, there was not a signed copy of that in the district office. So there are procedures in place that they will all be signed and scanned in and the electronic copy kept. So it probably was signed and it just got lost. So, but we're required to report that as a state single audit funding. So, any questions with that part of the audit?
So district calendars are put together and then they're signed?
Correct, and they're filed with the state. So that's the item that
Oh,
gets
like as a
submitted
report.
to DPI, and you print it off and you sign it.
Got it.
But it was filed with
So they
the
were
state.
filed, okay.
Correct, because they're able to go on and get a copy of it, but we need to see a signed copy, so. Then we have some, yes.
So on the remedy for the free and reduced lunch applications, it says we would possibly have another employee, and I don't know if I should speak to you or Mr. Milzer, but maybe Mr. Milzer, have another employee go through the applications. How many applications do we usually get?
It's a little different now because we have direct certification, so we have, let's say 450 students on free and reduced. But not all of those will be applications anymore. Some of them, the information comes from Milwaukee County on whether they qualify or not. But we may still have 100 or 150 of those. And in this case, it was the program figures it out for you whether they're free or reduced, but the amount was just keyed in wrong. And so it took that information and came back with the wrong result.
I was just wondering if, economically speaking, if it's reasonable to have two people go through it, or if there was a better accounting system to use to manage one person doing it.
To try and fix it another way, what we're looking at now also is to have people fill out that application online so that they're putting the information directly in, and then it goes directly to the software who figures it out and comes back with that. So we're not inputting what they had on their paper, and that could take care of it too.
Right.
Was that one of your recommendations, or you just point out what happened?
We just there's many different, a lot of districts, they'll have someone enter it and another person will verify it. But that's, because you don't have to verify their income, it's you just take what they give you. So that's probably the best way to do it, is have an online version, because then they put it in and they would know. If there is a mistake, it's what they've given you, so that's on them.
Thank you.
Then we also issue a management letter. This letter, we have a significant deficiency, which we have every year, and that's preparation of financial statements. The lovely bound audit report that you received, or the PDF copy. Our responsibility pretty much is the opinion letters. Everything else in the financial statements is the responsibility of the districts, including adopting all the GASBs and having everything reported. So I would say 99% of our districts, out of the 40 that we do, we have this comment in there. We've had it every year, so it's nothing new. So it's just something that we're required to put in there. Then other comments. We do credit card tests during the year, because that's probably one of the biggest areas where fraud can occur. We take a look to make sure receipts are being turned in and that the expenses are reasonable. One thing we do look at is the credit limits on the credit cards, and they were anywhere from $20,000 to $500,000. So $500,000 seems a little high sometimes. They have it for, they purchase a lot of computers and so forth on the credit card. But when you have a high credit limit like that, there's a possibility if someone is going to misappropriate in this credit card that it increases the amount that they could do. So we just want you to be aware that you should take a look at the limits on your credit cards to see if they are reasonable for what that person needs the credit card for.
Since this came up last year, and we already have taken a look at that, and we've allocated that we have 2 or 3 employees that can have that limit.
Okay.
Is there a way that we can fix this so that it doesn't pop up every year? Is there something we can do to resolve this?
If we'll
So-
just, I'll put a note in here that we just ask to make sure that you take a look at it every year, and we can get rid of that comment. So it's pretty much just to make sure that you're aware that the limits are that high.
Yeah,
So
we
you're
did
s-
discuss it, and, excuse me, I think the month that the auditors tested was before we made the change. So we made the change, but when they came this year, they looked at a month that was already, there was no change. So these are the exact same limits as they looked at last year, even though we made a change and they're lower. So they're pointing it out again, but I think it's a good point, because we had the discussion, we lowered them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll just put a comment in our work papers that we noted that it was looked at and we can get rid of this comment, so.
But should the board be reviewing that? The board should be reviewing the limits, or, I don't think we've ever seen.
Oh, we did last year.
We talked about
We
it
talked
last year.
I know we
about
talked
Last
about it,
time.
but I don't know if we,
And Mr.
Yeah.
Moser reviewed it and lowered the,
right, but,
those limits, except for the 3 employees.
Yeah.
Because of the rebate, you said $26,000 in rebates?
Right.
right, I understand why, but is it writing somewhere what the limits are? Is it a policy, or is it a practice?
It's not a policy, it's a practice, which we changed last year.
Okay.
And then we also have a comment about the actuarial reports, the pension one. It is due for the year ending July 1st, or for the period ending July 1st, 2018. That'll be used for the 2019 audit. And unless there's major changes to the plan, then it has to be done earlier. And then also the OPEB needs to be completed for July 1st, 2017 for the 2018 audit. And with the stipends and everything, they do an update on those. They don't do a full one. They do an update on the schedules every year, so. But you guys can always have those actual studies done in time, so. But we just always want to make sure that you are aware that we get out to some districts and of course they don't have those and it pushes everything back because the actuaries, it takes them several months to get those done, so it can cause the audit to be late, so. Any other questions?
What is our rating, right? Is it like, we have an A1 rating, or,
That I'm not even
do you know?
for the bond rating.
I don't remember off the top of my head. We were second from the top, I think, on the rating scale, but I'd have to look it up.
That's okay. Any other questions?
So the OPEBs that we have on the books, and there were some new ones added, right? The 7 million is a new,
It was always, the way it was done, they were doing an annual required contribution that would get added to the financial statements. We didn't want it all hitting at once when they adopted this probably 6 years ago, where we had to start accruing for those, because otherwise it was just footnoted. And then they decided, the GASB decided that they want the full amount on there. So that's why that changes. It's always been a liability to the district, it's just never been showing up the full amount on the books because they didn't want to take a big hit all at once. And I think they decided that it's probably better that they do that, and show the full liability on the books, which I agree with. It is a liability to the district.
so it's a transparency issue?
Yes.
Full disclosure?
Yep.
It's a big number.
Correct.
Is it
Oh,
too
yeah.
big? Too big? Do we know? Big
It's-
enough, or-
It all, when these actuary studies started happening probably 6 years ago, a lot of districts did look at the retirement benefits they were offering their employees, and a lot of them did cut those or decrease them substantially. So we've seen liabilities go way down from what they originally were. But I would say for a district your size, that's probably, a lot of them just have the pension. A lot of them got rid of the supplemental years ago, so.
We seem to have a mixed bag of things that we've evolved into. Huh?
Yes.
Okay.
We're working through that schedule over time.
Right.
But
Yeah,
the mix will always be there, right?
No.
No. Okay.
no.
All right. Thank you.
And you guys have made changes
We have
to
made
it over in the past, because if I recall, the 1 year, the liability dropped substantially in the footnotes because we weren't accruing it at that time. But if there's a significant change made to it, you have to get a new actuarial report, and then it would reflect in the audit as a lower liability. Unless you give them more, that would be higher liability.
Right. We have some grandfathered employees, so it's just working its way through.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you both very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8B is the District Administrator Goals Update. Dr. Miller?
I'm going to use the screen,
Okay.
and then I'll go around over there.
You want another section of lights off?
You try the brightness on your screen.
It's just this slide.
All right, we'll muddle through here a little bit. Okay, so I'm pleased to be here tonight to share with you the progress that we're making as a school district. It's really kind of difficult to believe that we're already at the midpoint of the school year. I feel like it was really just yesterday I had this up there and we talked about what the goals were for the year. Tonight I'd like to use the same format that I used at the beginning of the year to share with you how we're moving forward. I began the year by conveying to the staff that my vision was like a tiny house, simple, but built with extraordinarily big ideas. My vision is to get better, and that's simple as well, but it's supported by the big ideas that serve our students. There's been nothing better in the last 6 months than being among the children again. To best serve the children, I believe we need to get better at 3 important things. We need to become a better place to learn, a better place to work, and contribute to a better community, a community of families that value and support our school district. My goals for accomplishing this as a district include ensuring that all of our schools meet the goals of their school improvement plans, that we increase the trust of our employees at the building by 10% and at the district level by 15%, and that we increase our engagement with community partnerships. As a district administrator, my personal goals are derived from being rated overall as effective on a rubric based upon the Council of School Superintendents. In addition, my achievement will be measured by the specific impact I have in supporting our leadership team. You have the rubric in front of you. As I near the end of the presentation, you may want to use it as a reference. Our academic targets as a district are important to our progress. To be a better place to learn, we are targeting a 100% graduation rate and an average of 24 on our ACT score. We expect at least 70% of our students to be advanced or proficient in literacy and math on our standardized tests, and we expect that our Gallup engagement scores for the district be at least 65%. How we get there is really important. Recently, you were able to hear from every principal about their achievement scores for their schools and what their goals were for getting better. It is expected that all buildings meet the goals of their school improvement plan. Doing so involves a careful analysis of data, collaboration with staff, and specific goals at the classroom level and at the building level. Every teacher and every building principal creates what we call an SLO. SLO stands for Student Learning Objective for teacher goals and School Learning Objective for school goals. These goals are outlined in My Learning Plan, the Wisconsin Educator Effectiveness Tool for doing evaluations. You can see that each individual teacher and principal must include baseline data, rationale, information about the learning content and grade level, student population, what the target is for growth, how long it will take, and what evidence sources will be used to measure progress. This document is initiated in the beginning of the year, reviewed mid-year, and evaluated at the end of the year. The progress is important to ensuring we are a better place to learn. But becoming a better place to learn won't happen if we don't engage the community. We also need to ensure that our employees believe this is a better place to work. Last May, we measured how our employees' perception is about their work environment, and we really learned a lot. As a district, we determined that an important area we need to focus on is employee trust. Our goal for this year is to increase employee trust at the building level and at the district level. Over the last 6 months, we have focused on the key areas of our employee perception data to increase trust. Every 3 weeks, I have a meeting with each building principal. At every meeting, I put this document on the table, and we talk specifically about the highlighted areas. I ask the principals to share with me at least one story that illustrates how they and their staff are addressing our employee feedback. This discussion keeps our goals top of mind and is leading us to get better. As we become a better place to learn and work, we contribute to a better community. It is our goal to increase our community partnerships. Our strongest partnerships with community currently exist in the area of student apprenticeships and internships. This chart represents our past and projected partnerships. I'm pleased to say that we are on track at this time for the number of partnerships planned for this school year. The strength of our partnerships with our community is evident in one of the most exciting things of all, the construction of the new Forest Park Middle School. We are making excellent progress on the construction. It is incredible to see it being built and to visualize how amazing the learning spaces will be for our students. I feel incredibly fortunate to be this close to the process and for having Mr. Milzer and Mr. Cloutier literally by my side. While the construction of Forest Park Middle School is a major endeavor, the day-to-day responsibilities of my role are critical to our district. As the district administrator, it is my goal to be rated overall as effective in all 5 areas of the superintendent's professional practice rubric. In the interest of time, I will not be sharing something in all of the areas tonight. I am, however, collecting evidence for all areas and will provide more detailed evidence at the end of the school year. Tonight, I've chosen one area from each component that I would like to share with you. In the area of relationships with the board, it is my responsibility to be proficient in providing what is listed here. I've selected information as an area to highlight and share as an example the regular communication you receive each week in the Keeping You Informed. These messages are intended to do exactly what they're titled, Keep You Informed. I believe this communication has not only strengthened our relationship, it has equipped you to better perform your responsibilities as a board member. I enjoy sending them to you, and I hope you find them enjoyable to read. Community relationships are critical to effective leadership of a district. The area that I have been focusing on is approachability. I've made a very strong effort to be visible in the community at school events and city events. I'm a member of the Franklin Public Library Board and Volition. I've enjoyed meeting new people and reconnecting with those I knew from my past, especially those that remember me from my principal days. I believe our staff relations and trust will get better if we improve communication. Our employees now receive a staff e-newsletter that highlights, first and foremost, our points of pride. We also include information from all district-level departments. The feedback from our staff regarding the Franklin Find has been very positive. At the core of getting better is knowing how to get better. I have a long history of learning how to get better. My new role has a great deal to do with effectively leading leaders. We have some of the best leaders I've ever encountered here. Leading highly intelligent people takes a lot of skill, and to be honest, it's pretty intimidating. My team has been patient with me, and I am growing in this area. I'm eager to learn and have already read some great books. I'm honest and open about what I need to learn, and I'm certain we're getting a better result. We must take care of business. Again, I'm extremely fortunate to have the support I have from my team. But I know that I'm responsible for ensuring we're on track. An extremely important area that I felt necessary to address this year is safety. I've been a member of our Student and Employee Health Safety Committee for the last 13 years. I, however, believe we need to take a closer look at safety alone. We have therefore formed a safety committee. It is my goal to see that this committee remains in place and meets regularly every school year. That brings us to the end of my presentation. I'm humbled every day by the remarkable responsibility that I share with our employees to ensure that our students are safe and, simply said, get better. Thank you. Is there any questions for anyone?
Yeah. Item 8C is the construction report. Mr. Milzer.
All right. Now, since our last construction report, we have walls out there going up in the music area and the gym area. Two different types. They're the walls of the gym are precast concrete panels that they've put in. They've got all of them in, but the two on the far end so that they can still get their crane in and out of the center for picking up the steel joists that go across the top. And when they're done with that, that'll be filled in. Outside of that, in the music area, they're working on putting up block walls, which you can see readily on any given day that they're working on that. They've got their plastic over them most of the time because it's cold. Once they're done setting the steel joists over the gym, they'll come right back over it with the roof decking and start to enclose it, and then kind of wrap around that area and put the roof on all those different pieces. They're installing electrical panels and the electrical service right now, which is set to be turned on Saturday the 27th, so that we'll have electricity to the site, and then we won't have to run generators anymore. The concrete slab work is continuing. Right now, they're prepping the office area to pour the concrete out there, and that's going to occur on Monday, at least as it's planned. So it's moving right along. And they'll move into each of the new areas and kind of do the same things that they've done here. Some of the walls are a little bit different system, but it's going very well.
And I might add, you can see more updated photos on the website.
Right,
It's
right.
regularly updated.
Every other week, we put new photos up so that you can get a close-up look at what's going on and see that.
Oh, go ahead.
If there are any community concerns about anything construction-wise, have they been coming to you, or, I heard today from someone that the generator noise had been bothering a resident, and so I was wondering if they went straight to you or to someone else.
They've done both.
Okay.
I guess we've had some of the days when the wind was really strong, it picked up some of the garbage and took it over the fence, and so I got a call on that, but Cullen went right out and picked it all up, and now they're going out there on a weekly basis and walking around to make sure there's nothing outside of our fences. And then there was a neighbor that called Cullen directly to say that they felt a vibration from something. And because we had tested the sound was within the city's standards for how loud it was, but it was right up front here, closer to the houses.
Yeah.
And I think within a day or two of that, we were able to move that back around the back of the building. And on Saturday, the generators will go away entirely, so it will be quiet. And the city was fine with that. The city engineer was involved in that because I think he received a call as well.
Yeah, I was told the response was almost immediate. You know, once the resident said something, they responded immediately, but they didn't say anything right away. So they, you know, had they said something sooner, something would have been done, I'm sure.
Right.
about
The
noise.
construction company has been very good at responding anytime they get something. There hasn't been much, but they get right on it and figure out a solution to it.
And with the building being next to this building, residents can easily walk over here and come in any time. It's very close to our administrative building as well, so.
And we've had some cold snaps, but relatively, this winter's been pretty mild. Have they found that they've been able to maybe get a little more progress than they thought? Or is it just kind of what they've factored in and they're right on track with what they were thinking as far as their schedule?
Yeah, you're right. It's gone both ways. And in those coldest snaps, it was too cold for them to do anything several days. They have a threshold where they won't even start their equipment if it's that cold. So we lost some days there. But their plan is to, when the weather is nicer, they bring in extra crews. And then they get right back on track because they have multiple crews and they don't have all of them here, but they bring them in to get us back on track. So we're probably, for some of the points out there, we're probably 2 weeks behind where we thought we'd be when the schedule came out 3 months ago. But they said they can make that up easily when the weather turns again and it's warmer. And they'll be working Saturdays if they're nice days as well.
Okay. Thank you.
So all design decisions are made and furniture selections is all done, or is that still in progress?
No, that's still in progress. We've worked on a selection of furniture that's going to be at the middle school. As soon as it comes in, and the teachers and the students are going to give it a try and see what they think works and what doesn't work, as well as the writable surfaces. We're doing, I think, 3 different kinds to see which works best before any of that goes into the new building, and we place orders for that.
There certainly was a lot of furniture at the convention,
Right.
very different kinds, and they do say it's a very important part of the flexible learning spaces is the furniture, so.
Right.
Curious how you were just figuring out what is the best, so.
Yeah, we learned some things at the high school for the pieces that went in there, but still, that's a high school. And we wanted middle school students and middle school teachers to be able to get a sense of what it was like and how it worked for them, to make sure that we had the right furniture.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item 8D, the WASB State Education Convention reports. And Mrs. Witkowski, you can continue with your furniture.
My furniture? Well, I think the report is in board docs. I did attend 3 half-days at the convention, focused more on the keynote. I'm always interested in hearing keynote speakers. So the first day I was there in the afternoon. And prior to that, I did attend one session on flexible learning spaces. It was a new middle school they were sharing their experience. I will say one particular interesting thing was they focused on a math lab that they actually hold classes with combined grades every single day, and everything is personalized within that space. So the teachers work on pullouts, and it was interesting that the parents bought in. You know, you have 6th and 7th graders that all show up, and they all work on their math, but it requires, again, that you have the computers in place, Chromebooks, and you have standards-based learning in place in order to make that work, but they have shown results in that experience. And it was a big change for the district, but they have had success. And of course, they show some of the other fun things on the building. One thing I thought was also very interesting is that this is where they added a middle school onto a high school, so obviously sports is a big thing. They added some gym space, but they added this flexible gym space, I guess, where they, to get additional height in the space, they dug down, and they actually have like drop-down batting cages in this space. It was pretty interesting to see. Thought quite creative. Also, I stopped in, they also have these sessions where you just go to the convention area or the exhibit space, and they have little drop-in sessions. But I did notice that, I'm going to forget, the what's the big insurance company? The Trust was, I think they've kind of reinvented themselves. They were definitely there talking about mental health and mental wellness. And they've invented a model, or they are contracting with a model to provide basically online counseling so that people have greater access to those services when they need them, and in a setting that's comfortable. So that was also very interesting. Tony Evers gave his address. His highlighted reforming school funding. I know you all probably are aware that there is a committee in place now to study that. I don't know if we're participating at all. And then the keynote speaker was Ravi Huthsing. I did not know who he was, but apparently he was a guitar player for the Hanson Group in his earlier life, and now he is a cultural ambassador, works with the State Department all over the world in bringing education to trying to cross cultural barriers through, music is kind of his thing. And he did share some of his ideas on education. One thing I noticed at the convention was, we had STEM, like 3 years ago we had STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And then last year I heard about STEAM, where they added the A, which is for art, because we need to have creativity in our engineering processes. And this year I heard of STREAM, which they added the R. So what do you think the R is for? Any guesses? Guys, no? It's for recess, because apparently we also need to have free time to fully develop our social emotional learning was also pretty big at the conference. And now I don't have. That second day, I also attended, I wish I could pull up my notes on, or I could just look at my pocket guide. That might be easier to look at. I did figure this out. I did attend the Pewaukee session with Mr. Katie on entrepreneur expanding innovation, and apparently there's a partnership. We have a partnership with them to, again, it's the idea of career pathways and getting kids having real-life experiences. Their program, interesting, they actually rent office space, so when kids are in these programs, they go to the office to receive their education. That was also quite interesting. I also did hear one session on a school communications plan. I did not attend the one that was put on by that, but it was, they gave the contrast of a small district and a larger district and the importance, you know, you really can do this in both districts, different size districts, and it is important to, because it tends to be a function that's part of someone's job and not always done very well in a very coordinated fashion. What else can I say? I think the last session was a smaller district that really focused on, you know, we have, should we flip our classrooms, should we blend our instruction, should we personalize it, what really works? And their take on is it really does depend on the teacher, and they're very focused on putting teachers in place with the curriculum and very focused on fidelity to the curriculum. So they have, they tend to hire more experienced teachers. They said the younger teachers weren't quite as focused on delivering a consistent product, so they tend to go with the older, more experienced teacher. But that is really what they focused on, and that's what they are successful with, is focusing on curriculum and delivering it as it, in that fashion. The other keynote was Dr. Bill Daggett. I don't know if you are familiar, but he has went around the country, you know, looking at the most successful districts that have been able to advance students, not necessarily, you know, the most higher performing, but those that have had an impact on student learning. And he also got into, it's really the culture that's more important than strategy. I've heard that before, that you have to be, that really, what's happening in the classroom is important. He showed an interesting video, because I know I mentioned to you, Jim, that I've never really seen automatic bricklaying. You know, when we look at construction, I've seen buildings go up, and there's always somebody that has to put the brick upon the brick. It's never, I mean, there's innovation in terms of how they raise themselves up to that level. And you mentioned that there's a lot of technology around being able to work under different conditions, but now they have a machine that will actually lay bricks. They have a robot that will paint a house. So these jobs also are, I guess would say, are, you know, they could go away. So something to think about. So where it's probably more important, again, to being able to, you know, use knowledge, not necessarily, you know, is testing really the way to go, since it's really about access to knowledge and being able to apply it. Some of the themes that he was promoting. And also the last speaker was in the arts area. He was in the Lion King Broadway production. He was the king, I guess. He did 4,000 performances of this. And his speech wasn't that put together, but you had to marvel at, you know, his voice and his ability to sing and reach people was amazing. You know, that was definitely his talent. Obviously, his background was he was raised in in the projects, but he was able to, public education again gave him access to be successful. So I made some other notes in the document, and all of the handouts are still available on the WASB website, and I guess I would encourage you to maybe peruse through that. Maybe those of you who couldn't attend might also take a look at that and maybe pick a handout and come back and share something you might have learned that you, because there is, I think it's important that we do kind of get out there and continue to learn. It's a good opportunity to, I mean, this is a statewide conference. You are, you know, people are sitting next to you, they're school board members from all over the state, and they're from all different occupations. It's a really interesting mix of people, all looking to improve public education. So,
Thank you.
yes.
You want to go, Tim?
Sure, I can go. I was able to get the report completed, and Megan helped put it up today. I just got it up today, so it is in there. I did attend the delegate assembly, and with other business obligations, I couldn't attend a whole lot else, so, but there were 294 delegates present, and this session went pretty quick, actually. It was less than an hour. There was very little discussion. There was one that got amended with regard to reimbursement for transportation. There was the last part of the sentence read through. Providing transportation to, let me just read the whole thing. The resolution was that the WASB supports legislation to require the state to fully fund as a categorical aid the cost to local public school districts for providing transportation to pupils who attend private and parochial schools through a taxpayer-funded voucher program. And that's how it was presented. The amendment struck through a taxpayer-funded voucher program. And there was some discussion, but it passed overwhelmingly. The amendment passed and the motion passed. So that was one of the only points of discussion. That the one resolution that was about safe and welcoming school districts that read, they're committed to ensuring all students are able to learn and thrive in a safe environment. You should have seen the people that were just like, well, yeah. And so there was a lot of confused look on people's faces, but it's not like you're going to vote no. So that passed overwhelmingly. And then the one for the Wauwatosa School District did get brought up. We had to have a 2/3 vote from the members present to even bring it to the floor. That did pass. One guy noted that because the session went so fast and the get-together at Major Goolsby's wasn't going to be till 3 o'clock, we got some time, so we might as well talk about it. That was his reason for why we should bring it up, and he also said, I think they should be heard, so whatever, and that was fine. So I thought you might have found this one interesting, Jim, because you had some comments on this when we talked about it last time, and that was with regard to the negative tertiary aid, and it did pass. It passed. There was a lot of discussion. There were some smaller districts that weren't for it, but then some who were smaller districts said, well, it's probably be in the best interest of everybody if this passed. And so, again, this is just a resolution to, as an official position statement, I guess, from the WASB. But it was close. It was like 190, I think I put it in there, 195 to 161 or something, which I thought was interesting because it didn't take a lot to figure out that math added up to more than the 294 that were in the room, which wasn't the first time that happened. And I'm like, okay, so how does this work? Well, there's a gentleman sitting in front of me that was just waiting for the chair to call the vote, and he had both paddles in his hands, just ready to rock. So that one person, one vote thing kind of escaped him on that one, I guess. But so I mentioned that in the report, so you can get a kick out of that. But I actually did have a serious question I wanted to ask you. Wauwatosa's position was that the reason why they wanted this resolution passed, which was they wanted to, for referendums, WASB supports legislation to require that the definition of shared costs shall exclude any building or building maintenance debt service costs which are approved by any future referendum if excluding the debt service costs increases aid. And so they said, his position, the president of the board was there, and said that for every dollar that the Wauwatosa School District borrows, it would actually cost them $1.45 in aid that they would lose. So I guess if you could kind of expound on that a little bit, and how does that affect us, and what does $1 of borrowed costs to us mean? Are we in that same?
Yeah, we're in the negative tertiary group. I'd have to look at how it works out.
That seems
dollar
like
for dollar.
that seemed like a big swing. Is that?
Yeah, I think they're farther into it than we are, so it affects them more than it affects us. But when we when we're in a referendum and we work out what we think the tax rate will be or what we think our aid will be, we take that into account. So we run the scenario based on our extra expense that we're going to have and how that will affect us to take it into account. Now, we don't make a big deal out of it to say for every dollar it's this much, but we tell people this is what the tax effect will be based on what you're doing. And Wauwatosa is one that's always done it that way and has always said we can never pass a referendum because it costs $1.45 for every dollar, and in some ways, if you keep saying that, that's true. Who would vote for it if that's your approach? But on the opposite token, they're farther into that formula than we are, so
Yeah.
it hurts them more than it hurts us, and it's difficult. They've also never had a referendum since referendums came up in the 90s. The community isn't used to it either, which is difficult. And generally, the first time a community or a district comes out with a referendum, it's usually voted down. People aren't used to it. It doesn't matter what it is. It just tends to go by the wayside. But I think their needs have just been getting bigger and bigger over those years, and they're looking for a huge amount of money. So I think this is a way that they could have a much better chance of getting it. And it really, if you look at it point by point, it makes sense why that community would have to pay, $1.45 for every dollar they get. It's really not the way the formula was supposed to work, but the formula existed before referendums came about.
Yeah. Well, another takeaway that I had from being in the room with board members from all across the state was I heard a lot about, there's a lot of places that are passing referendum because they for operating costs, for building maintenance. I mean, the two that we've been involved with have been to build new buildings. And on the one hand, I felt really bad that, they got to pass these referendums just to make their operating budget or for their building maintenance, but then maybe they didn't manage their finances the way they should. So my overall comment and my feeling at the time was that we're pretty fortunate to be in the situation we're in, where we don't even have to think about stuff like that, which is kudos to you and your team and all the administrative staff for the way we've been running the district. And so I wanted to provide that feedback too. So if we go to referendum, which is my whole point when we had at the last meeting, that it should be a big deal and it should be as transparent as we can be, and we should try and get as much feedback as we can get to do it. I think we do make it a big deal, and it's only if we need to. And these other places, they're just trying to get their hands on money wherever they can because they're not disciplined enough, largely because they're not disciplined enough. But there are smaller districts that just have a hard time. So congratulations on all that. And so it was an interesting session. It was a quick session, but it was still interesting. So that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you for doing that. And I'll try to be brief. I went on the 17th. It was the only day that I was able to go, and I'm so fortunate to have been elected to the CISA Board of Control. I really enjoy being on that board, and I was invited to the CISA networking breakfast. That was the first session that I attended, and we met with administrators and Board of Control members from the 12 CISA districts, and CISA is the Cooperative Educational Service Agencies for Wisconsin, and we sat at tables with all the different CISAs so we could, well, the theme of the convention was telling our stories, so that way we could talk to each other and tell our stories from our CISAs in our districts. And I also got to sit with John Ashley, from the Executive Director of WASB, and the Commissioner from CISA, Jesse Harness. And so the other CISAs that were at my table were mostly from northern Wisconsin and much smaller CISAs and school districts, and they had a lot to say about sparsity, aid, and how they're struggling up there. So we had some interesting conversations. So that was a good couple hours. And then I went to the same general session that Linda did with the speaker, Robbie, who sings, so I won't go into that. And then I did attend the session with the Teachers of the Year panel, and the teachers were a fifth grade teacher from Genoa City, Mary Ellen Kantak, and Matthew Miller, who was from Sheboygan, and Jill Rundy from Indian Mound School District in McFarland, and then Brent Zinkel from Wausau High School. And it was an open panel discussion, and they discussed how they could tell other school districts what makes a good teacher of the year, and how we could help make our teachers of the year. And some of the things that they talked about were how collaborating with administrators and the boards and looking for approval from them for what they want to do, help make them better. And then also that national board certification was very important to them, and then getting the support from their administration and board on that, which I believe we do that here too, was important to them. And then support for professional development in their districts also was very important to them. So that it was interesting to hear them. And then also in the general session, we saw them get their awards. And then I went to a session on access to public records and personnel files. And I think the boards might be pretty familiar with public records, and I won't bore you with the details of that, but what might be of interest to the board is that if you do get a public records request for information on yourself, you do have a right to review that record before it does go to the public, so that you can add comments to it and explain anything in that record before the public sees the record on yourself. And that also, that when the public does go get a record nowadays, a public record, it used to be that, we have policy on that, what it would cost, and if there is a cost and things like that. But now, if they go in with an iPad or a phone, they are allowed to take pictures of those records, and then they don't have to have a cost for that record. So that was something I had never thought about before. And then I like to go around in the exhibit hall and talk to any of the students that are in there. I know Mrs. Wachowski likes to do that too. And I have a picture, and if you go in and look at the little picture in there, you'll see I'm talking to two little girls from McDill School District or McDill School in Stevens Point School District, and they couldn't stop talking. They wanted to tell me their story. I don't know how many people went back to talk to them, but they were adorable, and they were talking about green and healthy schools, and how they want to walk and bike to school, and they've got a forest like we do, and so they even invite the public to their forest at night, and they put a luminary candles. They light the whole forest with that, so you can walk through the forest. And they have winter hikes there through the forest, and they do anything they can for the environment in their school district. And they were very excited to talk. It's just always pleasant to talk to the students. You'll see a picture of an owl also in there. And there's the Wildlife in Need Center, who will come to our school district if we like, so I'm going to leave this with you. They'll bring endangered animals to our school district if we would like, or to any classrooms, and give a presentation. They charge $200 for the presentation, but instead, if you get parents to send along things they need, such as paper towels and things like that for their center, they'll waive the fee. And I walked by, and this little owl, a screech owl, was just sitting there. He only had one eye, and you didn't even notice him. It was just an adorable owl, but the animals they bring are really interesting. So it might be something, they're close by, that you might be interested in talking about. But it seemed like a very good conference this year, so Any question, do the directors have anything to share? You don't have to.
Valerie and I were able to go to the WASDA luncheon and see Dr. Greco from Menominee Falls receive the Superintendent of the Year award. And I think my big takeaway from that was just talking about a system of continuous improvement. And reiterated some of the things that we're working on here and the good work that's going on in Franklin.
Nice.
It was a good convention. I was very proud to represent Franklin and also the WASPA board that I sit on for the state. I tried to attend the HR-related sections more than anything. Was able to attend 2 on wellness and the importance of financial wellness for staff and ways to kind of bring financial wellness as part of your overall wellness program, as well as mindfulness and ways to infuse that in a wellness program, rather than only thinking about it as diet and nutrition, but really bringing in other elements of wellness for staff. So that was good. We have an upcoming staff wellness committee in a couple weeks, and we're working on some of those same things. So that was a good one. And then the community engagement ones, Doreen did do a section. I was at that for a little bit. Megan was there as well. And then I also was able to attend Elmbrook's on 20 ways of engagement, from the board to the community, the board to staff, staff to staff, administration to staff, and they had some really good strategies that we do some of, and again, the way in which they present them and celebrate them, but also some interesting ones that just make you think about ways to maybe do things. So it was good. It was good. It's always good to see so many districts there.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to 8E. The treasurer's report is available in the board docs library. And then 9, school board liaison reports. We have the personnel and policy 6711, selection and reconsideration of instructional materials, library media materials, and displays. Dr. Miller.
Yes, thank you. This is a policy that is mandatory. We need to have a policy regarding this, and our policy that we had really was quite old. I think it was over 10 years old. I'll have to check the date. But you'll see what we've done is we've pretty much started over. The structure of the previous policy wasn't as good, wasn't as fluid, and therefore, there was a group of people who worked through this under the leadership of Mr. Reuter. So I'm going to allow him to kind of talk through any questions with you that you might have about the policy at this point.
Yeah, I would just say that Mr. Cohn helped co-author. We had input from Mr. Volo at the high school, Ms. Pogles, our district K-12 library and media specialist, and then feedback from teachers from the high school English, our English department coordinator, Lisa Dennis, and Taylor Goad, our 6-8 literacy system specialist. So a wide variety of people to help provide feedback as we, as Dr. Miller said, started from scratch really, and we're more concise in the policy, and ultimately you see in the rules, the process for concern of materials and all stakeholder involvement.
In reading through the policy, the only thing I see that is well, actually not the policy, but the administrative rules, I just have a concern that what might be missing is in the very last section, the C, the complainant recourse, where it says, the last part, where it will be, if it isn't taken care of, the issue will be taken to the superintendent, and if unresolved, to the Board of Education. I think that it might, in looking at some other school district policies, I looked at several, and it looks like it might be more appropriate to possibly put in that if unresolved, it might be more appropriate to take it to the superintendent, who will then take it to the Board of Education for an appeal and that the Board of Education will have the final decision. And I've got several different paragraphs of wording from other policies to be considered if the board would like to hear them. My question here was that the issue may be taken to the superintendent, and if unresolved, with the superintendent to the Board of Education. And I question, how would it get resolved by the superintendent and then taken to the Board of Education? And I did discuss it with Dr. Miller a little bit, and you did agree with me, I think, about the suggestions from other school districts, if I read one or two of the paragraphs.
I think there were some good suggestions there that clarify kind of how the process ends. And then one of the things that Ms. Evans and I discussed is, what role does the superintendent play in this? And as I conveyed to her, what I would be doing is checking to see if the committee followed the process. And I wouldn't be on my own making the determination. My role is just to make sure that they followed the process. And I would support that decision if they had. If they didn't follow the process, I'd send them back to do it again. So in other words, I wouldn't, as an individual, make a decision about a book or material being removed. So that was the gist of our conversation. So I'm just bringing some clarity around what I would do. Then if after I say support the committee's decision and the person doesn't agree, then this language says it can then go to the board. So then as a board, would you then also want to just check on the process, which I don't think you need to do because I've already done that. You then as a board are going to be saying yes or no, separate from what the committee, you'll consider what the committee decided, but you'll have that authority to do so, and then your decision would be final. So essentially, I think Ms. Evans is just trying to bring some clarity around that process. So there were some good suggestions for language. I don't know if you want to read any.
Well, I can start with reading two here. From Grafton, they say, an appeal of the review committee decision may be made to the superintendent, who will notify the Board of Education of an appeal, and we don't have to have this, within 2 weeks. The Board of Education will make a final determination of the complaint at a regular scheduled board meeting. And then Mequon Thiensville has, if the complainant is still dissatisfied, he or she may ask the superintendent to present an appeal to the Board of Education for a final decision. And that was the one I thought sounded more complete or accurate. There was one more. If not satisfied with the decision, the complainant may request that the matter be placed on the agenda of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education. A decision of the board with regard to action is final. So that's 3. And this is only if, hopefully, when you have a committee with community members and staff, it's going to end at the committee, but if that's not satisfactory somewhere, it needs to end.
How does it get through the committee? I mean, if you have one person who's complaining and they're not satisfied with what the committee comes up with, but you have 10 people in the committee and they vote, 7-3, that they're not going to accept the complaint. Is it the majority vote or what?
What do you mean they're not going to,
I'm complaining
okay.
about a film, a book, something, and I come and this group gets together and they have 30 days to look at it, and at the end, how do they resolve it? Is it the majority rules, or they get this person to change they get me to change my mind about the complaint?
Well,
That I
if
didn't
it
see
went to
here.
the board, though, the board has to look at everything that the committee went through, it has to review all that, but the way I see it, ultimately, and this is no disrespect at all to the administration at all, but we live in the community, we represent the community. Not that half the committee wouldn't be from the community, but I think if you have to finally go somewhere for a final decision, I think the board should make the final decision.
As an elected body.
Yes.
So I, as the complainer, as long as I don't accept what the committee says, it has to move on.
You can appeal, you don't
You
have to.
can, but you don't have
okay.
to. I would hope that you have the educational community, the educational portion who are half the committee who comes from the school body, and then half that is open-minded also from the community. You hope that they are going to be open-minded enough to have the right decision, so it doesn't have to go to the board.
Okay.
That's what I would hope.
That's what I would hope, too,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would hope it wouldn't have to come to the board.
Okay, but if I don't like the answer, I, as the complainer, have to appeal it and move it on, okay?
I would say the second statement you read, I think, characterize it the best.
Is that the one from Mech One, Thiensville? I think that framed what you described,
Right.
your role and our role would be.
Right.
I think that framed it very well.
You can change that, too. If the complainant is still dissatisfied, she, he may ask the superintendent to present an appeal to the Board of Education for a final decision.
Yeah. That's the
And as you noticed in the rules, there's timelines. I would recommend a timeline so that 6 months out, someone doesn't come back and say, or 2 years later, that there's a timeline for appeal process to the board.
So you're saying that would be the language you would insert in C under complaint and recourse?
yeah.
And the only other thing I noticed in other policies was that, and this is just something to consider, that the composition of the committee had more community members. Some had a total of 5, but they did not include a board member. So, they were more heavily weighed with community, it was more equal of community members. But I'm just bringing that up, that's what I saw. But that doesn't mean it just was more equal.
Yeah, currently it's 5 and 5, how we have our
Yeah,
process, with
yeah.
a board member or liaison to instructional service would be present on the committee.
And you wanted to include that just to have someone from this body part of the process along the way? You felt that was important to have?
Yes.
And then it might not have to go to the board
Right,
to that way.
through a liaison
so-
report, an update, or whatever it might be, that it's
Oh.
keeping the board informed through that liaison.
And then there's just one other thing I thought, that there was a section in here about the secretary. It was where the district administrator would, number 9, send a letter, shall send a letter to the complainant and the teacher outlining the final decision. I think you should also send a letter to the board, so we know what happened.
Yeah.
Number 9,
Sure.
yeah. So where do we stand? What would the board like to do?
I have no problem changing the language in that, cleaning it up a little bit.
Call for a motion to approve with the proposed changes within the administrative rules.
I would make that motion. To
Which,
approve the policy 6711 with the changes to the administrative rules as stated previously.
you like the MEC 1 themes, with the
Yes.
MEC 1 Thiensville? And I'll hand this over to you, Dr. Miller.
Yes.
We have a motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Any discussion?
I don't have any problem with the way, well, I didn't really look a lot at what was eliminated, but I just looked at it now, and I noticed that it really does address a lot about the selection process, whereas you just kind of didn't include that at all. You're really talking about how to eliminate something. Was there a reason you took out all that?
Yeah, so the first line of the revised policy states through the curriculum review process, that's the determination of selection of materials that align to the standards you adopt as a board and our beliefs around teaching and learning for all students. So that's how we select materials, through that review process, through study, action planning, piloting, implementation, revision, refinement. So this would be if there was questions to the materials that are being used daily by our teaching staff.
So those rigorous curriculum process replaces all the other information?
That's inherent in the curriculum review process, yes, in that policy.
And is the public aware of what that process is? And because this was in our administrative rules before, right? Now that's gone, we just have curriculum review process. So if I'm a parent, I want to know what that process is.
They would be referred to policy like they would for this, or bullying, or wherever that might be. That the policy is what we have a curriculum review policy, so they would be referred to. This is how we go through the process. Just like if a parent had a question about materials that they're using, they talk to the principal, the teacher, they still didn't like the answer, the resolution, they would be referred to this policy, and then they'd follow the administrative rules, procedures for filing a complaint for removal.
So you're saying if I were to pull up that curriculum review policy right now, I would see much of the information that was been eliminated in the previous policy?
I'm not saying that. As Dr. Miller stated, the previous policy was outdated. It was more library heavy than it was selection of materials heavy.
But it's still, I mean, the title says, it still covers the same materials, right? Even though it was library media heavy, it does say instructional materials. That is the title of it, right?
Is your concern that a parent won't be able to find this policy? Is that what you're concerned with?
My concern be, how, do they know how we got the material in the first place, I guess, you know? How does
But I
this book
guess
get in the?
if I were a parent and I had a question about that, I would question my child's teacher. And then again, if I was not satisfied with that, I would probably go to the principal. And then again, if I wasn't satisfied with that, I would call this building here and say, who do I talk to about this situation? I truly don't expect parents to constantly be going into our board policies. I think if there's a question, they go to the appropriate sources, and the people in this building, or our teachers, or our principals, send them then to a policy. They can cite a policy, or send them to the appropriate people to talk to. I don't think our parents immediately go, I'm checking a policy on this. I don't think that's where they go.
No, I agree with you. They're going to work their way through the
Right, and I
channels,
think-
but
and I
then
think
there
that's-
could still be a problem, and they could still wonder how to get this
But
material.
we have people who can direct them to this policy, and I really like the beginning of this policy, because I feel like I've heard sort of this introductory statement over and over again. I like the consistency where we're talking about a rigorous curriculum and a review process. I mean, those are all those buzzwords that we use over and over in so many of our other policies and so many of our procedures that we use, and I just think this is a good policy because of that. It's a lot of consistency there.
Is this a two-meeting process? Is that how this is worded, or is it meant to have one meeting and then see if it can get resolved in the first meeting?
It's a two-meeting, so
Okay.
item A is first meeting.
That's what I thought.
To kind of get the background understanding of the material, the two sides of the story, and part B is more of a procedure of action to ultimately make a motion to vote for majority vote, and then communicate what moving forward, if that material or book, text, whatever it might be, will continue within the curriculum or be removed.
Provides an opportunity for thoughtful consideration of the request rather than acting
That
quickly.
makes sense now, yep.
Any other comment?
You noted changes, but also there was a change that you were asking for under 9 to include the board, so you have that as well?
I wrote it
Perfect.
down.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mrs. Larson and a second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. And then we're moving on to policy 6712.
So the resource sharing and interlibrary loan policy, again, is a policy that we're required to have, or should have. I didn't think so originally, and I actually, last year, had asked the librarian if perhaps we could eliminate it, and she said, yeah, I think we could, but then we did the study, and I realized it was one that we needed. So she did read it at least a couple of times now, and she did not recommend any changes to it. So essentially, we're reconfirming the policy because of the date on it.
Looking for a motion to reconfirm policy 6712, resource sharing interlibrary loan policy.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. Then we're moving on to item 9B, liaison, board liaison reports. Do we have any liaison reports? No? Okay, then 9C, school visits. Any school visits? I do.
Retirement's working out for you.
I have to say, I'm very fortunate.
Do a couple from you, will you?
So now I'm fortunate to say I visited all the schools now, so, yeah. So I did, on the 15th, I was able to visit Pleasant View School, and, yeah, and I seem to have lost my second page. Oh, yeah, okay. And Mr. Feckler was very nice to welcome me, and he took me on a nice tour of the school, and the first class I visited was Mrs. Hogan's 6th grade math class, where I spent approximately 1.5 hours observing the class and speaking with the students who were working on math percentages. And the class works in small group sessions. They're just individual groups. Most of them had 4 or 5 kids in the group, and all different assignments at one time, different levels. There were a few kids that broke off it individually. They preferred working that way. Mrs. Hogan is a really dynamic teacher. She just has a lot of energy, and she was able to reach all the kids to help them. You know, hands were going up all the time, and she just was everywhere helping them. It was an exciting class to be in. I don't know that all teachers could work the way she did. So I was really impressed, and there was one aide in the class helping at one table. She was very skilled. It was just, you know, it was a long class, and I enjoyed engaging with the students. Very good class. Then I moved on to Ms. Shesky's 6th graders. It was I want to say English class, I can't say that anymore, it was a literacy class. We went over a chart on archetypes in fantasy stories and viewed a short video that depicted archetypes in a commercial. So they discussed the significance of heroes, villains, and companions in the video, and their use in advertising, and then they went on to reading and analyzing their stories. So it was nice to hear the students talk about, it was a commercial for an airline, and they got to see how they could find who was the hero and the villain in the commercial, and, you know, the father was the hero, and work was the villain, and, you know, it was interesting to see them decipher that video. And then I moved on to observe the fifth graders in Ms. O'Reilly's word work session, and we had Robin Wood here showing us that spelling, the word work, and I also got to see some cursive writing in action too. But it's a 15-minute little class. It's really busy. The kids are really working hard on their spelling, and it was nice to see that in action after we were here doing that sorting. And then I went to Ms. Schabowski's fifth grade math class, and I'm going to pass somewhere here, just so you can see. She works on math talk with her kids. You want to pass that down? She likes to hear them use the right words when they're working on math. So they solve word problems in metrics during this class, and the students would work in teams of two using different strategies to solve several problems, and they would draw the problems out on, they weren't poster boards, but big sheets of construction paper, and then they would, some of them would have the same problems, and they would then go in front of the class and share their problems with the rest of the class, and they would write the problems out. They would also draw them out in, I don't know how to explain it. Well, they would draw them out in like pictures. So they would compare each other's way of doing the math, and then she would hang them out in the hallways too. She'd pick certain ones to hang in the hallways every day so that they could share them with other classes. She also holds I believe every Wednesday after-school sessions to help the students with math. And she says she gets quite a few students that want to go and have that extra help. So they really enjoy having her as their teacher. And then during the tour, we also stopped by Mr. Tobias's music class. It was Martin Luther King Day, and they were singing songs to honor Martin Luther King. So we had a very nice day. I was there right from the beginning of the morning until I think I left at noon or 12:30. So yeah, it was a good tour, and I thank you very much for inviting me.
I might add that Mr. Feckler will be at the board meeting on February 14th to do a presentation.
Okay, so now I'm looking for a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C to discuss employment, promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data for named administrative staff. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Larson.
Aye.
Mr. Gamble.
Aye.
Mrs. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen.
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Aye.
And I say yes.
Motion carries 6-0, absent. Do we need a short recess? Anyone? Okay, we'll take like a 3-minute recess. We are now in closed session. Okay, we're back in open session at 8:27. And our next item is future agenda items. We have, it's 11A. We have a technology report on February 14th. We have a school counseling report on February 14th. An academic and career planning update on February 28th, and a food service report on February 28th. Any other agenda items? Okay. Item 12, school board meeting debriefing. Are there any comments? All right. Then item 13, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Nielsen, a second by Mrs. Larson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:29.